Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Uncensored CMO. Now, my next guest I've been trying to land for some time. Scott Galloway is famously controversial and perhaps the most uncensored guest I've ever had on the show. There are so many things I wanted to ask Scott, and I know people listening have also sent in many questions to put to him as well. He's famous for his controversial opinions on marketing, like his brand Dead, for example, and also got lots of advice on life and business and success in general. He's also launching a new book, so I wanted to find out what that was all about and really get his tips for how to be successful. This episode is raw, it's uncensored, and it's full of real life lessons. You're really going to enjoy this one. Here it is. I've got the man himself, Prof G, on the show.
Thanks, brother.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
Good to have you.
Thanks, John.
I thought I'd start with something I read that you wrote, that it took you 25 years to have an overnight success.
Well, sure. So people come up to me now. I got two people stopped me on the way over here. I walked from my place, and Kara Swisher, my podcast co-host, is constantly saying, I made you famous. And I joke that it's really rewarding for me to have really rejuvenated her flailing career. But I would say after working my ass off for, 25, 30 years, I'm an overnight success. So it's rewarding, but it should have happened earlier, boss.
Yeah, right. I mean, most people focus on the success. It's easy to, isn't it? You go, well, of course, everyone's heard of you. But like, what were the most challenging moments or the biggest failures that led up to that moment? Because that's often what people don't talk about that they should do.
We're going to need a bigger boat. I was very, I started investment banking. I didn't like it. I wasn't good at it. I was living with my mother at the age of 25. Didn't know what to do with my life. I've started a lot of businesses. Most have failed. I've had a company go Chapter 11. I've been divorced. I've had pretty big personal failings. I've been shot in the fucking face a couple of times, professionally and personally. I think my lowest or my most terrifying moment was when my first kid came along. It was 2008, and I kept doubling down on this company, and I never really understood the power of diversification. So I always thought, I'm smart, I'm good at what I do. I've always made a lot of money, but I always kept doubling down on one company, usually my company. And with this company in particular, Red Envelope, I had borrowed money against my stock to buy more stock. A good company. I thought it was going to be great. And then 2008 came along, great financial recession. We had these weird things happen at the warehouse where we were sending 20,000 gifts for the holidays to the wrong addresses, which isn't good for business. And then I basically went from like financial security to less than zero in about 3 months. And then my kid had the poor judgment to come marching out of my girlfriend. And I remember just thinking, I remember being in the delivery room and I felt so nauseous and just so awful. And I remember they said to me, just so you know, if you go down, we're not focused on you right now. And I remember thinking, it's not childbirth that's making me so nauseous. It's that I've like failed this kid on day one, that if I'd just been a little smarter, if I just put some money away in boring things, if I'd just been a little bit more disciplined, if I hadn't tried to live so large and impress strange people, I could have just been so much more mentally healthy and had such less anxiety. So that was a pretty big failure. I've had a lot of I can't imagine anybody here not had a lot of failure in their life and not tragedy. It just, if you love people, you're going to have grief. If you want to be really successful, you're going to have failure. So yeah, I've had my fair share, but I don't think I've necessarily had more than most people. But I think one of the keys to success is your ability to endure failure and rejection. Nothing great, professionally or personally, is going to happen unless you take an uncomfortable risk, unless you're willing to approach strangers, unless you're willing to be persistent, unless you're willing to invest a lot in relationships, bring forgiveness, occasionally put your ego aside, endure rejection, and unless you're willing to kind of, I call it my core attribute as an entrepreneur is my willingness to get out a spoon and eat shit. I'm not afraid to call people. I'm not afraid to ask strangers for money. I'm not afraid to ask strangers to join the company and work for me. I'm not afraid to ask clients to be or strange companies to be clients. But that stuff's humiliating because most people say no. And so your ability to mourn and move on, most people really aren't willing to endure the pain of rejection, so they avoid big opportunities. It's embarrassing to ask strangers for money.
It is.
It's embarrassing to call potential clients. It's embarrassing to approach a stranger and express romantic interest. It's just all this stuff is easier to stay at home and, try and trade crypto and lose your money and go on YouPorn and pretend you have friendships on Reddit. It just, there's a reason romantic comedies are 2 hours, not 30 minutes. Real victory is enduring challenges and rejections and enjoying yourself. And I worry that, it's a bit of a word salad, but I worry that young people at the hands of the most talented, deep-pocketed organizations in the world are trying to convince them they can have a reasonable facsimile of life without the risks of leaving their house or engaging with individuals. But yeah, I've had a lot of low moments, and the learning there is, you think you're never going to make money. Again, I've thought that. You think that, okay, I'm not going to be able to take care of my kids. I've thought that. I've thought I'm never going to have like a really wonderful relationship. I've thought that. And at the time, it feels like you know these things. Like it's just truth. And what you realize is if you keep going, all those things can and will happen. So I love the saying, life isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to what happens to you. And my superpower is I can get punched in the face and I can get back up. That's always been my kind of core competence.
Yeah. That was insight in good to great. Well, great by choice, wasn't it? It was not that anyone has more or less bad luck. It's entirely down to how you respond to the bad times and respond to the good times that dictates the performance.
Yeah, luck is if you live long enough, luck is pretty symmetric. And the flip side is true too. You're never more prone to a really big, stupid mistake than after you've had a big win. When you pick NVIDIA and it goes up 12-fold and you start actually believing you know how to pick stocks. So you double down and you get really aggressive. Or you get promoted at work and you start thinking, I'm very good at this. A lot of your success is not your fault. And so to have some humility when things go really well, but also to forgive yourself when things don't go well. I think about 49% of what happens to you is your individual actions, but 51% is a function of the environment and things that are out of your control. So have some humility, but also forgive yourself when you screw up.
I met the England rugby coach a few years ago, and he had this fascinating mantra of be tough in victory and be gentle in defeat. And it was very similar insight, actually. He said, when the team won, he said, that's when I told them what they did wrong. And when they lost, I told them how good they were. And it was,
I like that. Yeah, I think that's yes. Rugby, go rugby.
So pivoting to the successes, because good to get onto that, and asking for a friend on this one, but building your personal brand, you've managed to build quite a big business out of you, right?
Yep.
How do you scale yourself? Because you've only got 24 hours in the day. So how have you turned the sort of Scott Galloway, Prof G brand into a business?
Well, people spend a lot of time, especially in marketing, think about how to position their company and what their company strengths are. But people oftentimes don't really lean into what is their point of differentiation. What is going to be your strategy? What are you good at? What is the market value that you're good at? And I figured out fairly early, it was more genetic, something I inherited from my father. I'm a good storyteller. I have a good gift of gab. I remember my father, do you remember the first times you really registered emotion and nuance as a kid? I remember my dad's a handsome man with a Scottish accent. And I remember people just being so enraptured by him. And I remember thinking, but what he's saying makes no sense and it's not that interesting. And I recognized, it's the accent and it's his charm and it's his body language. But I figured out early on, it's something I got from my father, is I'm a good storyteller. I communicate well. I can write well. I do good podcasts, speaking. I like this kind of stuff. So I leaned into that. I always knew I could make a good living doing this kind of stuff, writing newsletters, that kind of stuff. But my superpower is my ability to attract and retain good people. Because I could do one book every 3 or 4 years, make X dollars. I do a book every 18 months and I make a lot of money. And it's because I have really outstanding people who help scale what we do. And we have almost zero turnover at Prop G. People think it's me in the kitchen with a camcorder doodling and doing things. And they're like, you must work 8 hours a week. I'm like, no, I work 30 to 40 hours a week. But I have 12 very smart people who are really committed, who I treat really well. But yeah, greatness is in the agency of others. You can make a nice living doing something yourself, but if you want to make an exceptional living, you have to figure out a way to attract and retain good people. That's kind of the whole shooting match in terms of scale.
I like that phrase, greatness is in the agency of others. Expand that a little bit. What do you mean by that? And how do you achieve that?
I got 6 things today. I don't even know where I'm going. My chief of staff, Mary Jean, is here. I have 2 podcasts today. I have producers putting data in front of me. I've got a publicist lining up all sorts of stuff for me. I've got lawyers reviewing my investment documents today. I've got, an editor a social media manager who will take clips from this and other things and put it out there. Now, this is a position of privilege because I now have the money to do these things. But good managers do a few things. One, they demonstrate excellence. I'm good at what I do, and I work fairly hard. They hold people accountable. I have very straightforward conversations with people when they're not doing well. And they also demonstrate empathy. So what I found, one of the ways I matured as a manager was when I was younger, I thought everyone just wanted what I wanted. I wanted to be rich and awesome. That's all I wanted, right? I wanted a shit ton of money and for people to think I was awesome. And so I assumed everybody else wanted the exact same thing. And what you find is some people people value different things. Some people really want to manage other people. That's really important to them. They want to be a manager. Some people want their name in lights. They want to be in the newspaper. They want fame. Some people are totally focused. They're like, I'll work 80 hours a week. I'll give up everything. I'll have no relationships, shitty health. I just want to make a lot of money. Well, that's fine. But if you take the time to sort of figure out what people really want, like what's really important to them, and then they see you trying to deliver against that. Oh, we got a call from the New York Times. They want to quote. I'm going to let you take this because I know how meaningful it is for you to have some of that public airtime. Oh, you want to manage people? Okay, I'm going to put you in charge of this group. You just want money? Fine. I expect you to work your ass off and I'm going to pay you a lot. And that's okay because everyone around you sees you working this hard. It's okay to pay you more. But loyalty is a function of appreciation. And the fastest way to appreciate somebody is to figure out what they want and try and show, you can't always deliver against it, but try and show you're cognizant of it and that you're making an effort to deliver against it. And I've tried to do that. As a younger man, I don't think I was a good manager. I think I'm getting better now, but trying to understand, what does this guy really want? Like what's important to him? And also creating a really nice collegial environment. It's interesting, the number one factor for retention, people think it's money, it's not. The greatest predictor of retention is whether the person has a friend at work. And so we were spending about $1 million on an office space a year, which made no sense. Ego, big fit, big office, check out what a baller I am. And we gave it up in COVID. And now we don't spend all of that, but we spend most of it we have a policy at our company. If any 4 of them are together at the same time, they have my credit card. And that is either they're going to a Broadway show or Tulum, which they've done. As long as there's more than 4 of them, it's on me. And they have fun and they like each other. Everybody interviews everybody. They generally seem to get along and enjoy each other. That's not entirely possible when you get to hundreds of people. But when you have a small company, you can have a group of people that really enjoy each other. But I find that that's an incredible vehicle for retention. But I can do this. I can seem like I work much harder because of the, other people.
Yeah. People always remember how they feel, don't they? And experiences like that make people feel something, which brings me, you talked about Daniel Kahneman in a recent episode I was listening to. What impact has he had on you and how you think about how we behave?
He's had a lot of impact on me. It's funny, I have Yodas, and I didn't even realize this when I was younger. You don't need to sort through everything on your own. Find people you really admire, learn a lot about them, and make them sort of an invisible board of directors. Like I have a decent feel for what I got really into Muhammad Ali. I have a decent feel for how he would approach decisions. I have a decent feel, like Madeleine Albright. I took an interest in her. I have a decent feel for how she would approach decisions. And I got really into Kahneman around economics and a few things. One, on a very tactical level, Daniel Kahneman has this thing called risk aversion theory. And basically, people would rather endure a series of small, definite, guaranteed losses than the prospect of a big loss. And they overestimate the likelihood of a big loss. That is the reason that the best business in the history of the West is insurance. Because they know on average there'll be, that 3 of these million houses will be wiped out by flood. So let's charge them enough that, there's a 1 in 100 chance. It's $1 million to rebuild the house. Let's not charge them $10,000. Let's charge them $30,000. And the fear of that catastrophic event and wanting to avert the big pain results in people willing to engage in what is the biggest ripoff in America, and that's insurance. So 7 years ago, this is strange, I canceled all my insurance, including my health insurance. And you think, oh, you're a bad citizen, right? And let me be clear, I'm not suggesting anyone cancel their health insurance because I'm privileged. I can afford any health scare. So why would I have health insurance? And between property, flood, I used to insure my vacations, health insurance for my family, because I'm a narcissist and I wanted the best insurance, is about $55,000 a year for my company, which is my money because I own the company. And I found that about half the time we weren't getting reimbursed because we don't want to go in network. We want to go to the fancy doctors or whatever. And so in 7 years, $375,000 will buy a lot of health care. Now there's a chance one of us gets really sick and it would cost $1 million or $2 million. I can absorb that. So insurance is yet another transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, because people who are wealthy can afford to take these kinds of risks. But Kahneman that's one example. Tactically, I essentially canceled all my insurance. His other thing is the relationship between money and happiness. And he's done a lot of work on it. And what he found is that there is a relationship. We tell ourselves a myth that money can't make you happy. That's bullshit. It can make you happy. Middle income people are happier than lower income. Higher income people are happier than middle income people. That's the bad news. The good news is that it tops out. Once you can afford housing, vacations, absorb a medical shock, take care of parents, in New York, that's probably about $1 million and a half bucks a year, but supposedly it's about 90 or 100 grand in most of America. Once you get to that point and you have a decent amount of savings, the incremental money adds very little happiness. It does go up slightly, but the returns are diminishing. And it's changed my policy on tax policy. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't tax, say, over 10 million in income, 70 or 80%, because the reality is the difference between making 10 million a year and 20 million a year for people blessed like that, it's not going to get you much. Whereas going from 40 to 60,000 through child tax credits or some sort of negative income tax, that can create a lot of happiness. So it's changed my views on social policy. He's changed my views on the way I approach risk. So yeah, he was a great mentor. I like wonky stuff. I look at Peter Drucker for my own personal life around fear and shaming. I look at Sam Harris. I got off of Twitter because I'm like, why am I on Twitter? And, these people are so mean. These people ruin my weekend on a regular basis. So why am I here? But yeah, Kahneman influenced a lot of the way I look at stuff.
Actually, one I reread after he sadly passed away was that nothing is as important as you think it is in the moment you're thinking about
100%.
it. And that's so true, isn't it? Is that, you obsess about things, we get angry about things, and you don't realize they're not as important as you thought.
Well, slow and fast thinking. I've been thinking a lot about, just because this is uncensored, so I like to go to the really sensitive stuff that gets people angry. I've been thinking about what's happening at Columbia University and some of the protests on campus. And his seminal book was Thinking Slow and Fast. And the idea that we have really important instincts to think fast. A lion's coming at you, you know to run. Someone's threatening your family, you turn to violence. You make snap decisions, and that was key for survival. So we have this reptile brain that's just ready to defend, to strike. And there's two keys or two sensations to the survival of the species. One is that we need to continue to really enjoy sex. I think that's mostly taken care of. The second is that we need to be able to get pleasure from binding together to fend off a perceived threat or attack. And I think a lot of young people have a certain amount of rage and aren't having enough sex. And as a result, try and find common enemies. They go on the hunt for fake perpetrators or fake evil. And I just can't, I wish these kids would find other means of finding dopa hits than thinking some Jewish kid heading out of the library is really a threat to humanity. No, she's just headed to a manicure, boss. So try and figure out, slow your thinking, find other ways of getting a dopa hit, and really trying to imagine, isn't this person most likely just like you, trying to get an education, had no choice in being born Jewish or not Jewish, and you're being so aggressive and so hateful with your rhetoric, and you're intimidating these people. And I can promise as they get older and their thinking slows down, they're just going to think kind of, what the fuck was I thinking? Why would I be this hostile towards somebody? And so I think young people deserve a really wide berth. I'm a big fan of free speech, but at a minimum, I'm like, nothing says like you're wasting $120,000 of your parents' money, like showing up to a rally to support our murderous autocracy. And two, I think your grandkids, should they ever see this shit, and unfortunately young people have a camera following them around, which I think is bad. I think your grandkids are going to be really embarrassed that you were this unfeeling or weird, and seeing this 0.2% of the global population as a threat to your well-being. I can't grasp how these kids are not slowing their thinking down and being a little less hostile and being a little bit more graceful, so to speak.
So what role is social media playing? I know you've got some strong points of view on that. How is that fueling what we're seeing playing out at the moment?
Well, it speedballs it all, because the worst thing that happened probably to society the last 20 years is that Mark Andreessen unwittingly didn't build in micropayments to the first Netscape browser. What do I mean by that? If you saw a cool article in the Washington Post or a video clip on Fox, I'm trying to be balanced here, that you like, you should be able to really easily go, yeah, I'll pay 3 or 5 cents for that. Instead, they didn't have that technology, so it all became ad supported. And since 1945 to about 1995, the general consensus in the marketing community was that sex sells. I'll have someone hot, and that'll get you to want to buy a Buick or wear Nikes, right? And then we discovered something, or the algorithms discovered, that there's something better than sex, and it's rage. And if I go on Twitter and I say mRNA vaccines alter your DNA, it's guaranteed that hundreds of comments are going to come in. You're an idiot. You don't understand the biology. No, Scott is right. And by the way, I don't believe that. There are a few things I love more than vaccines. Anyone here has a vaccine? Here's my fucking arm. I will get 17 vaccines. I don't even need to know what it is. I love vaccines. I think they're a gift to humanity. Anyway, but anything really hateful or coarse, the algorithms elevate because people weigh in. And every additional engagement, every additional comment is another Nissan ad and more shareholder value for the company. So our most talented people working in the most well-resourced companies have a vested profit motive in enraging us, dividing us, and making our discourse more coarse. And what it has done is it's taken a population of people who are actually, America's bad, but it's the least bad place in the world. And it's given young people reasons to be really angry, and some of their reasons are justified. But 30% less people are speaking to their neighbors. 52% of Democrats are worried their kid's going to marry a Republican. Like when I was growing up and we were dating in our neighborhood, we didn't even know what political party. You wouldn't even think about talking about this shit on a date or to your neighbors, or it was just, everything's become so coarse. And I think that if America were a horror movie, I think the call is coming from inside of the house. We don't like each other. And so social media has speedballed that. It has been a disaster for young people, just as it's been really hard on girls, just as they're coming into their years where they're thinking about social capital and wanting to be liked. We basically have the cafeteria following them around 24/7. And we're afraid, because of politically correct doctrine, to have an honest conversation around the difference between boys and girls. Because if you talk about the differences, people assume that you're not sympathetic to non-binary kids. And that's not true. You can have empathy for everyone. Civil rights didn't hurt white people. Gay marriage didn't hurt heteronormative marriage. But girls and boys, loosely speaking, are different, and they're predisposed to different types of behaviors. The reason I bring it up, boys bully physically and verbally. Girls bully relationally. They wait, they're calculating, they're smart, and then they strike. And we put nuclear weapons in their hands in the form of smartphones. And they find someone who's weak or someone who's pissed them off. They plan, they wait, and then they go after them on social. And you have seen a dramatic uptick in self-harm and suicide, especially among young girls. And this happened, this is not an exaggeration, and this has happened a lot. 14-year-old teenage girl in the UK, Molly Richardson probably even heard about this, is really down, really depressed, bullied at school, goes into her room, starts talking about being bullied. The algorithms pick up on it, and she gets this exact email. Molly, here are some images on suicide we thought you might find interesting. And it's a picture of nooses, a picture of razors, and a picture of pills. And you know how the story ends. Her parents go in the next morning and Molly's gone, right? Someone needs to go to fucking jail. It's just, how did we attach a profit motive to depressing and enraging young people? And I get depressed and upset with social sometimes, the algorithms give people incentive to go after each other and be really coarse and really mean. How does a 14-year-old modulate? There's absolutely no reason to have anyone under the age of 16 on social media. They have weaponized it. They have lied about it. They've deployed really charming people, Sheryl Sandberg, to pretend she gives a flying fuck about young people, and then depress teen girls all over the world. To have an individual named Mark Zuckerberg who's done more damage to young people while making more money than anyone in the history of the planet. And then we have a feckless, ineffective leadership, average age 63, that's a cross between The Walking Dead and the Golden Girls, trying to regulate these technologies, 40 hearings on social media and impact on kids, zero legislation. Speaker Pelosi, when she had her first child, Castro declared martial law in Cuba, and 2/3 of households didn't have a color TV. But she really understands an 18-year-old girl getting extreme dieting tips on Instagram and what needs to be done. She really understands a 23-year-old male who's getting addicted to gambling apps. So I think we have minority rule, and I think we're very concerned with seniors and making sure wealthy people stay wealthy. But I think we've totally abandoned young people. And the fastest way to build a trillion-dollar company is to find a flaw in the species. So young men are more risk aggressive. They like gambling. Oh, girls are very sensitive about their social capital. So they become addicted to aesthetics and kind of their self-worth in the eyes of strangers. Think about what a place of perversion, I mean, downright perversion, Instagram begins with. We're going to have algorithms that reward 15-year-old girls for posing in provocative sexualized imagery such that her peers and strange men all over the world can evaluate her. I mean, doesn't that make the Catholic Church seem kind of upstanding? It's just like, this shit is just so weird and so perverted. And I think when we look back on this age, we're going to regret the weaponization of our elections, the coarsening of our discourse, the income inequality. But I think the thing we just won't believe, and I think it will change, is we're going to ask ourselves, how do we let this happen to our kids? And I think a lot of it is because our elected representatives don't understand these technologies. These companies are very smart. They've weaponized Washington. There's more lobbyists, full-time lobbyists in Washington who work full-time for Amazon than there are sitting U.S. senators. And they're very good at deploying these it's already happening. Sam Altman, God, he's dreamy and thoughtful, hushed tones. I'm worried about AI, John. We really need to be thoughtful about this. And I'll care like I give a flying fuck about anything but money. And then I'll deploy a series of lobbyists to kill any legislation. We're being Sandberged again. And it's our fault. In America, to be rich is to be loved. So you can understand people making incremental bad decisions or rationalizations so they can have billions of dollars and be superstars. I'd like to be, that would be amazing. But we don't vote in place people who protect our children or have the skills to regulate these companies. There's more regulation in this mic than there is in all of big tech. There's been no regulation in big tech, which is just strange when you think about it. So I'm very worried about young people. I'm worried that we haven't paid any attention to the externalities of social media. Fossil fuels are a great thing. They produce carbon. We're concerned about it. Pesticides are a great thing. They produce terrible emissions, so we have an FDA to say you can't use these pesticides, right? What regulation is there converting attention to money at the expense of mostly children and mental health of America? So anyways, big tech has not been good. Big tech has speedballed a lot of the negative aspects of our society.
It's too embedded, isn't it, really, with too much vested interest in the economy. I wanted to move on, if I can, to marketing and obviously your role, clinical professor of marketing at NYU Stern. I heard this story. I just want to check that it was true. But did you kick out a student for being late? And then your response to it went viral.
Yeah, that was my first brush with fame.
Yeah. Tell me about that. That sounds exciting. What a reason to get famous.
No, a kid walked into the class about 15 minutes in, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't allow people late in the class. And it was an uncomfortable moment, and then he walked out. And then he wrote me a diatribe saying, I was checking all the classes, I was auditing the classes, I was going to be in your class for 5 minutes and go to another one. And I said, okay, I get that, but I don't allow that. And I just wrote a response to him. I X'd out his name so people, and I said, this is in my next syllabus. I said, this is my late policy. And it got picked up by the media. And, I had to go back and read it and see what I wrote. But yeah, that was I say to young people, get the easy stuff right. I screwed up so much. I was late all the time, worked my ass off, and then I'd be late to a meeting. I mean, just get the easy stuff right. Show up, dress well. Anyone can dress well. Get your sister a gay man. That's a hate crime now to say that. The gay men have better taste than straight men. They do. Get your mom. Straight men have something is wrong in their brain around fashion. Literally, they're like, oh, this Knicks tank top and a baseball cap on backwards. I'm killing it, right? Find somebody who has better taste than you to dress, especially when you're young. Show up on time. Don't speak your first 6 months at a job. Just listen. There's just basics. Shower. Like young men aren't showering, right? Just some basics, right? Get the easy stuff right. And I speak from experience. I used to work so hard and I would get the easy stuff wrong. I wouldn't be kind sometimes, right? Say stupid shit or, I just get the easy stuff right. And I think there's some basic blocking and tackling. The young people have manners, follow up, just basics. So many young people don't make the mistake of thinking anyone cares about your politics at work. That's the one I hate. People will nod and call you a leader for complaining and then memo to self, next layoff, you're out of here. So get the basics, get the simple stuff right.
And you've taught a lot of marketing to MBAs. What would you say is the most important skill for a marketer today that you might see lacking at the moment?
It's the most important. If I could give my kids any skill, it would be storytelling. The ability to take a concept, a narrative, and communicate it in a compelling way across mediums. Learn how to write, learn how to present, learn how to get up in front of it. I'm not suggesting you need to be a great presenter, but you got to be able to present. So it can be very uncomfortable for people. So modulate, try and get to average. Learn how to write, learn how to, text. Some people give great text. Those people that they can just in 8 words summarize the situation and they're funny. Find the medium you are great at. It might be something on social. You might find you're great on LinkedIn that you could post. I am really good in front of large crowds. I'm not good one-on-one. If these people were here, you would find me intense yet aloof, right? Or insecure yet aloof. So I very rarely go to meetings alone. I like to have a foil there. Yeah. I'm not good on the phone. So I don't do important stuff on the phone. So it's important to figure out where is your strength. But storytelling is the key. The animals have instincts. They can communicate live, but they're not able to communicate to broader parts of the species. So they haven't evolved nearly as fast as us. We can write pictures on cave walls and say, this is when you plant the crops. I can communicate to you around how to get somewhere more efficiently, more effectively. So storytelling and an ability to communicate is something that's really valued in the species. That's why Mick Jagger gets to hang out with a 30-year-old ballerina, because he is an outstanding storyteller. So if you can communicate something in a compelling way to somebody, you can not only make a good living, you're going to have friends, you're going to have a broader selection set of mates than you deserve. So I don't know if it's, I remember 10 years ago, they were teaching Mandarin in high school. Anyone using their Mandarin lately? When I took computer science in college, I think one of the stupidest things we did was replace civics class with computer science in high school. I don't know if we're going to need as many programmers. We'll always need storytellers. We'll always need people who really understand how to communicate across different mediums. I think that's the key.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I put out a few questions to the audience to say, if you're asking Scott one question, there was one question that overwhelmingly came back from everybody. You're in Cannes, in front of probably the world's most celebrated brand builders, and you said the era of brand is dead.
Yeah.
What's the thought behind that?
Well, if you think about traditional brand building, from 1945 to kind of 1995 till the introduction of Google, the primary algorithm for creating shareholder value was have a mediocre product, a mediocre shoe, salty snack, car out of Detroit, and then sugary drink, and then wrap it in these amazing brand codes: youth, European elegance, American vigor, sex, paternal love, maternal love. We'll take 20 cents a tooth of peanut butter paste and turn it into $2 of maternal love because choosing moms choose Jif. And then we had these incredibly inexpensive vehicles of communication called broadcast medium, where 60 to 80% of the households every night were in one of 3 places: ABC, NBC, or CBS. So take that shitty car, convince it you're tough like a rock, and stuff the channel with it and print money. The Coca-Cola, you can dance like Michael Jackson or without Pepsi. Oh, I drink Budweiser because aren't those frogs funny? And this was the primary means of creating irrational returns to shareholders. And then the ecosystem got so crowded with channels that the returns went way down. And also, your social graph and word of mouth and Glassdoor said, okay, and I'll use the example of hotels. I travel a lot. I've spent probably 50, 60% of my life on the road. And I always used to stay at the Four Seasons or the Mandarin Oriental. Why? Because someone else was paying, and they always deliver a 7 or an 8. And when I'm in Istanbul, I don't know where to stay. But now with my social graph and TripAdvisor and Google, I know that the Soho House in Istanbul is the old American embassy, and it's great. Whereas the Chiltern Firehouse in London has the best room with a lot of hot young people who I like to hang out with. So the brand used to be this weapon of diligence. It was always a 7 or an 8, Four Seasons or the Mandarin Oriental. But now I can find the 9 for me with these new weapons of mass diligence called Google, TripAdvisor. So quite frankly, the brand has diminished in power, and it sounds very passé, but product is the new black again. If you have a truly better product, people will talk about it online and word will get out. So a lot of the capital has been taken out of marketing and has been reinvested in things like supply chain. Can I get you something within 48 hours for free? Can I produce programming for less than money that's really good? Squid Games, Parasite, Money Heist, and just, what do the companies that have added over $100 billion in value in the last decade have in common? They don't advertise. How much advertising does Netflix, Google, OpenAI?
What about Amazon? Because I mean, the old Bezos quote of advertising is a tax on a poor product.
Yeah.
And now Amazon are probably one of the biggest advertisers in the world and one of the most invested in storytelling, actually, back to your storytelling point.
I think they've taken a lot more money in advertising than they put out. They're one of their biggest groups is Amazon Media Group, where they advertise on their site. I don't see them actually as a percentage of their top line income. I can't think of the last Amazon commercial I saw. They buy a lot of keywords, but I think that all the big players don't spend that much. I think advertising kind of outs you as not getting it. And I think this is true of if you're having dinner with strangers all the time, it means you're selling an undifferentiated product. I was in the services business, and my life, when I really distilled, how do I make a living? I started a strategy firm when I was 26. I started an analytics business intelligence company when I was 40. And I thought, my life is renting my brain to old white guys. That's what I did. I developed these proxy father-son relationships with the CMO of a big company, and I said, I'm smarter than you. I'm going to rent you my brain, and I'm going to make you the CEO in 3 years or less. In exchange for this, you're going to give me $1 million to $2 million yearly consulting gigs so I can pay all these other people and make a lot more money than if I was just selling my own time. And I found it just exhausting. And what I say to people is if you're constantly having dinner with strangers, it means you're selling an undifferentiated product. Google was a 10x better product. Tesla's a better product, even though I'm not a big fan of the owner. So all this money has been taken out of branding, traditional branding, gone into direct response, Facebook and Google, and into the product itself. Nobody invested in supply chain. Amazon came along and said, no, supply chain is the opportunity. And they made a staggering investment to get you anything you want within 48 hours for free. No one was thinking that way. Everyone else was just trying to lower the costs in supply chain. Netflix is supply chain, producing stuff in different markets. NVIDIA is supply chain. They said, we're going to design the chip, but we're not going to invest in these factories. Shein, which is the fastest growing apparel company in the world. No stores, no warehouses, no factories, no trucks, no stores, software using AI to look at the 50,000 to 500,000 people that are on the site at any given time, tracking very closely their patterns and movements. And they go, okay, this top, we're going to need 1,700 of them. And then the software goes, what factory in the Philippines or in Vietnam can create 1,700 most efficiently? The order goes in, no humans. Order comes out, no humans. This is how we're getting it via air cargo to those addresses, no humans, all software, asset light supply chain model. Anyways, it really is an era of product and innovation again. And so the CMOs and marketers, we all love to be nostalgic and say, oh, advertising's coming back, and we give each other awards. Every day there's less and less oxygen in the room. So if you're over the age of 40 and you're traditional branding, ride it out. If you're young and you can get out, get out. It's an industry in structural decline. When I was young, I ran a brand strategy firm. The players were IPG, Publicis, Omnicom, they were the masters of the world. Google and or Meta will lose the value of all three of those companies in any one trading day, or lose or gain it. So the sun has passed midday on traditional brand. Don Draper's been drawn and quartered. This notion you can have a mediocre product and instill it with great emotion and just sell a lot of it, that's done. That's over.
So I wanted to come on to talk about your new book, which comes out tomorrow. So we're recording this on the Tuesday, comes out tomorrow. I want to start with the Marcus Aurelius quote, if I can, which I thought was fascinating. You have power over your mind, not events, which I thought was a fascinating place to start. Yeah,
life is about what happens to you. No, sorry. Life isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to what happens to you.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's the key, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, not only that, I struggle with anger and depression. That probably is no surprise to any listeners or anyone who knows me. And you're in the past. Depression for me is in the past. I'll think about this pod, and I'll think about the one or two places I screwed up, and I'll get angry and upset, and I won't be able to let it go. I don't forgive myself. And the past is the most immutable thing ever. There's literally nothing you can do about it. Literally, and I can prove this. Nothing we can do about it. But if you're successful, and I'm also successful, you're constantly in the future, right? You're thinking about, okay, I'm name dropping right now because I'm desperate for your affirmation. I'm going on Bill Maher on Friday. And the shit going on at Columbia, I know he's going to want to talk about it. So already tonight, I'm going to text Jonathan Greenblatt, Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, and I'm going to ask for their thoughts on it so I can parrot it and sound smarter than I am. I'm already really thinking, I'm mostly here because I like you and I like your hair, but I'm mostly here, but I'm in the future.
Yeah.
And that's the fear. The fear is that you get to the end of your life. And if you're an atheist like I am, and I think that at some point I'll look into my son's eyes and know our life, our relationship's coming to an end. I believe that. You're like, okay, I was so much in the past, not forgiving myself. I was so much in the future because I wanted to be successful that I was really never there. Like, did your life really happen? That's the fear, right? Were you never really there? So, life, what I would, if I could give myself anything or give young people something, it's like, okay, forgive yourself when things aren't going well. Recognize your life is how you respond to shit. When you're really upset, it's usually not about what happened to you. It's about whatever chemicals are running through your brain at that point. And just to ease up on yourself, forgive yourself, be nice, be good to yourself. And also occasionally try and just slow down. I think that's really the gift of kids, is they force you to be in the moment because they can be so disagreeable. But what is it that can put you in the moment? Like, what can just slow you down? I wish presence, which is sort of, I think, and just recognizing you can control your emotions. You can't control what happens to you. There's just so much of this is just so random.
Yeah. That's huge, isn't it? Another thing that struck me in the book actually was the impact of compounding, which I've learned doing this podcast. It's been insane. Like when you repeat something, you learn from it and repeat it again, and keep at it over time. What you achieved this year compared to 5 years ago is just astonishingly different.
Yeah, look, the power of compound interest. If you had decided to get a shitty Android phone, which I realize is not appealing, right? Having an Android phone is sort of saying to the world, your life really hasn't panned out the way you'd hoped. But if you had taken all the money we spend on iPhones, I bought every iPhone. I buy every iPhone, automatic on the list. It costs, I think the first one was $1,500, last one was $2,400. Someone did an analysis and said, if you got in a free phone, you can get a free phone. If you got in a free phone and you take all the money you had invested in Apple phones and you bought Apple stock, you'd have $3 million right now.
Wow.
Because obviously Apple's gone insane, right? But what you don't realize as a young person is, how old are you, young man?
26.
Okay, when I was his age, I could not imagine one of the flaws in our species is that because we haven't lived beyond 35 for 98% of our time on this planet, we can't calibrate time. So you're going to be around you're probably going to be around another 80 years, which means if you save $100 a month, or let's call it $300 a month, which is boring, right? Because you're expecting to be a baller and have him promote you and sell a podcast for a lot of money. But just in case you don't, if you manage to get $300 a month into SPY, low-cost index funds, and you didn't look at it for 50 years, not 50 years, 30 years, you're going to have millions of dollars. And hope this shit goes big, right? Hope you are a great DJ. Hope you sell the next great novel. But just in case, if you can figure out a way to automatically save $300 so you never see it a month at the age of 26, I can guarantee you by the time you're my age, I think I'm older than you, you'll be a millionaire. So just in case shit doesn't work out, and I didn't have that maturity. I remember telling my friend when I was 24, he was putting $2,000 in this super lame thing called an IRA Roth. I'm like, if $2,000 means anything to me when I'm older, shoot me. And he's made a fraction of the money I've made, but he's a multimillionaire because he was that lame guy putting away money every month. It is amazing. 11% a year, which is what the S&P has done since 2008. Sounds really uninspiring. 11% a year? It's nothing. Big deal. That means every 21 years, your investment's going up eightfold. So, as I say in the book, the good news is I know how to get you rich. The bad news is the answer is slowly. But you want to lean into your advantage. Your advantage is time. So if you just have a little bit of discipline, one less Starbucks a day, round up on acorns, get a way to have forced savings so it comes out of your check and you never see it. Go into low-cost index funds. Don't believe anyone on CNBC. Alternative investments, hedge funds, people who claim they know more. No one knows. My summary of the entire financial services community having been in economics. I'm around the brightest people in finances. No one has any fucking idea. That's the bad news. The good news is the markets in America over the long term are up and to the right. So you don't need to be a hero. Just save a little bit of money, play into your strength. You're going to have a lot of time on this planet. And a little bit of discipline, a tiny bit of sacrifice. Always save, never look at it. Don't think about it. Don't day trade. Don't get near crypto. Jesus Christ. And try and live a little bit like a stoic. Recognize that people aren't as concerned with your shit as you are, right? Get a Hyundai, right? If you ever want to get a car. Before you own a home, live in a very small, clean place near work. Double down on work. Be the guy that doesn't stay at the club and doesn't feel a need to signal with a bottle of Grey Goose. Go home, have a plan. By the way, that's really attractive to women, actually having a plan. And you're going to end up at a stage in your life where flexibility and economic importance are really important. So I think that and also that notion of compound interest, it goes for relationships too. Most people, when asked what the single relationship in their life is, they almost say, always, it's their mother, right? Even if you don't like your mom, even if you don't get along with her, it's usually the singular relationship in your life if you have to identify one. And it's because of compound interest. Every day she'd made dozens of these little investments. Like my mom used to wake me up with a soft voice, like, Scott, right? Totally concerned with my well-being, teaching me how to drive, all this shit, right? My dad wasn't around. You wake up, or she wakes up 30, 40 years later, and that relationship is singular. She's a millionaire in my eyes, right? She's been gone for a while, but like the wealth she accreted making tiny investments every day. And so when you're young, and I didn't do this, a little act of kindness, checking in on people, texting people, you hear about a job opportunity and you think of a friend and you reach out to them. You tell someone you admire them. You hear they're down, whatever it is, just tiny little investments when you're young. I made some of those. And now those friendships are just so big, right? So I think compound interest, most people acknowledge it in finance. What they don't appreciate is how much little investments and relationships can pay off as you get older. I mean, the friends I had in college where we made little investments with each other are just these wonderful relationships now because of that compounding of little things we did for each other.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about the compound relationship point. That's really true. Because I think I found as my network has grown, good things just come, doesn't it? Because you multiply the number of people you reach and opportunities get created and knowledge gets shared. It's very impressive.
It's a great point because, and this is in the book, the difference between being economically secure and the people who are really wealthy is there's a myth. And the myth is kind of the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren trope that rich people, billionaires crawled over other people to get wealthy. And what I found in the research is that actually wealthy people are generally speaking really good people. Because what you want is you want to be put in a room of opportunities without being in that room. And in order to be really wealthy, you have to collect allies along the way. You have to have people that think of you with opportunities, give you the benefit of the doubt. You also, wealth is a kind of what I call a full person project. And that is the fastest way to steal or to grasp or snatch financial insecurity from financial security is personal failings, a lack of character, divorce, which I've been through. I lost 60% of my net worth overnight. You split your assets and then you lose another 10% because you're supporting two households and you become a forced seller of assets, which is never a good idea. And also, show me a small or a medium-sized company that's doing really well and that all of a sudden kind of folds. I'll show you people at the top who are professionally divorcing. They're not getting along. So unless you're willing to bring generosity, forgiveness, empathy to your personal and your professional relationships, I don't think you're ever going to be that wealthy. I mean, some people are so fucking talented. Kanye can do whatever he wants. He's going to be fine. Assume you are not Kanye. Right? You want to bring, generally speaking, the millionaire next door is someone who values his personal relationships or her personal relationships, is a good person, and people want this person to win. So character really is, the most important part of being wealthy are things you can't control. When and where you're born. Being born in the 60s California, white heterosexual male, gave me unfair advantage. But the things you can control, saving, compounding, focusing on your talent, and being a high character person, being a generous person. If you don't bring generosity and forgiveness to relationships, I think it's going to be very difficult to be wealthy because you're going to end up with personal and professional divorce from key relationships.
Thank you. What I'd love to do actually is bring some questions in at this point. So I think we're getting to the hour point. Should I start?
Just keeps going because they're not changing their approach.
Yep.
In this come to Jesus moment that I hope to God is going to happen, how do we manage the fact that really this tech and social money took over from, the kind of dying off of industrialization in America? We need the money.
Yeah.
The tech people are the people who are supporting the people running for office. That's why nothing ever happens. Like, what has to break for us to get there?
So first off, I think big tech and their leadership are culpable, but the culprits are Congress and Senate, and to a greater extent, us. If we don't elect people that hold these companies accountable, we've had 40 hearings on social media and danger to kids. We've passed zero legislation, right? So like Snap got grief for their solar system, where basically you got to see where you were in importance to a friend. And it ended up really upsetting kids. They're like, wait, this person doesn't care about me. I'm not even in their inner orbit. And I would imagine that people at Snap didn't see that happening. But when it happened, you canceled it. Most social media CEOs do not do that. They're like, unless it's outlawed, why would I put myself and my shareholders at a disadvantage when it's not law? So here's the bottom line. I genuinely believe nothing gets better until someone does a perp walk, because we can't come up with fines big enough. They have so many lawyers. They have an ability to reduce these fines. Facebook is violating a consent decree, lying to Congress. They're fined $5 billion. $5 billion. It's 9 weeks of cash flow. So if I put a parking meter in front of your house that costs $100 every 15 minutes, but the ticket was $100, but the ticket was 25. The meter costs $100 every 15 minutes, but the ticket was 25 cents. You'd break the law. You would just break the law. And the incentives, there's no algebra of deterrence. Then no one goes to jail. Fines are, it's like a gnat hitting a windshield. They make so much money. So until everyone has to be off their phone under the age of 16, until every social media company is subject to liability and someone can go to jail if they send out suicidal ideation emails, until everyone is subject to these penalties, to wait for their better angels to show up, you just don't hold your breath, folks. America becomes more like itself every day. To be rich in America is to be loved, to be able to take care of your kids, your parents, to have a broader selection set of mates. That is really appealing. So you will make incremental decisions that might have a really negative impact on the Commonwealth unless you are regulated. Ford would still be pouring mercury into the river if it wasn't outlawed, because if they weren't pouring mercury into the river, General Motors and Chrysler would have a cost advantage when they continued to do it. So the people really failing are us. Until we hold these companies accountable, until we pass laws that say, you realize News Corp, Fox, they get fined $800 million for distributing and spreading false information about Dominion voting machines. That was a dumpster fire compared to the nuclear mushroom cloud of misinformation on Dominion that happened on Meta. But Meta passed this legislation that inoculates them from any liability. That makes no sense. So remove 230, elect people who are going to pass laws to hold these companies to the same level of accountability we hold any other industry. So I think it's up to voters and our leadership to do what we've done in every industry and say, okay, if you knew that not putting airbags in this car and a steering shaft that doesn't collapse and windshields that are not shatterproof and people start dying everywhere, they get to sue you. You can't even do that with social media. They can't be sued. They have liability shields. They literally can't. There's almost nothing you can do to them. So I see us as at fault. I think we've got to put in place people who understand these technologies, can regulate them, and I think we need to restore the algebra of deterrence. Thank you for the question.
Hello.
Hi, Rob.
What does the agency of the future look like? If someone is young and creative and would normally go into advertising, marketing, whatever, what would they go into in the future if that's not necessarily what you see is going to be the case?
I think there's going to be a lot of services needed. I'd see agencies evolving to more, and for lack of a better term, supply chain and innovation and storytelling across new mediums, really helping companies work through issues around AI. I think there's going to be a ton of help, a ton of demand for smart people who offer outsourced service. The great thing, I used to pitch consulting, right? I was in your business. I started a brand strategy firm. I was like, you can fire me more easily than you can fire an employee. And you're not sure if this brand thing, you buy into it or not, but give it a test, hire us for a year, ring fence your investment to $500,000. And if it doesn't work, you don't have an entire department to lay off, right? Companies trying to figure out AI, companies trying to figure out storytelling on all these new mediums. I would imagine there's a lot of niche opportunities. It's just that a great business model was to come in with really attractive, compelling people to tell a story and then convince you to spend more and more on broadcast so they could take 8 to 12%. That was a really compelling business model. And I feel like a lot of the agency world is still clinging to that model. And I don't think it works. I think a business model, I would suggest retainers. We're smart people. We'll answer your 2 or 3 biggest problems around brand or media, and you're going to pay us 50, 100, 200 grand a month. And we're just going to be your department, but you're not going to have to pay us healthcare. We're easy to fire. You can swap us out in 2 years when we run out of ideas. We're not politically weaponized. We don't know what the pet projects are here. And I think that a lot of companies are going to want to outsource a lot of this. But I think there's so much insecurity around there, around branding, storytelling, innovation, AI, supply chain, that I think it's going to be a great time to be in the services business. And then also people who are great, hire young people who are great athletes. Great thing about the services business is it's an incredible training. You have to be a great athlete. You have to be good with clients. You have to know how to manage a business. You have to be able to attract and retain people. The bad news is I've always thought of it, unless you absolutely love it, it's a young person's game. It took a huge toll on me. I was roaming the planet. It took a huge, Samsung called. The CMO wants you at the board meeting in Seoul tomorrow. Can you be there? Sure, I can. I mean, just ting, ting, ting. Being in the services business, I think it's a great training. I think it's a difficult way to have sustainable relationships. I don't know if you found that. You don't need to tell me, but I think it's a great time to be in the services business. I just think it's going to be a difficult time if you're banking on traditional media. And also, just very crudely, as far as media, your return on your human and financial capital will be inversely correlated to the screen that you're servicing. So you want to be in the business of creating media for a 50-meter screen called a movie theater, you better have rich parents. It's that business, all this majestic nostalgia around movies are back and Barbenheimer. Movie receipts are off 20% from 2019 this year. They were up 20% this year. They're down 20% from 2019. People don't go to... I go to the movies because I have kids, but I used to go to the movies twice a week. I used to see movies 4 and 5 times when I was a kid. I saw The Empire Strikes Back 7 times, and that was normal behavior. That is no longer the way. The content in your home is so amazing now. Next smaller screen, your TV, big business, growing a little bit on the whole, but tough, getting tougher. This thing, you can tell stories on this thing, champagne and cocaine. So whenever I hear a kid talking about creative or media, I'm like, what size screen are you producing content for? And if you want to be in the movie business, oh my gosh, that is a tough tough business. When I meet movie producers, I'm like, oh, your spouse is rich, right? It's true. Or they're like amazingly talented, like crazy, freakishly talented, right? And what I tell young people is surf where the waves are easy. Go to an industry that has an employment rate of more than 90%, right? I wanted to be an athlete. And I quickly, when I went to UCLA, I realized I was not in the 0.1%. So it was a blessing to be living with exceptional athletes and realize that I was mediocre at it. But here's the thing, in brand strategy consulting or analytics, you just need to be good, not even great, just be good and you can make a great living. So go in and into an industry that I also think another graph, I have this last day in my class at Stern, I have a graph. The correlation between the return on your investment in your career it's inversely correlated to how sexy the industry is. You want to open a members only club for artists in fashion industry? Oh my God, that sounds awesome. Expect to lose a lot of money. You want to be in food, fashion, the arts, anything that sounds remotely cool, it's overinvested, which drives down returns. You want to build a software scheduling platform for healthcare maintenance workers? Jesus Christ, that sounds awful. Ka-ching. Ka-ching. The most boring, non-romantic businesses offer the greatest return on invested capital. So if you want to go into a sexy industry, just be clear, you better be in the top 1%. SAG-AFTRA. It's not easy to get a SAG-AFTRA card. This is the union for actors and actresses. I guess they call them all actors now. 180,000 of the most talented people in the world. Hard to get that card. 87% will qualify for health insurance because they make less than $23,000 a year. You really want to be in that industry? You really want to be in that industry? I went to UCLA with the best athletes in the world, went to the Olympics, played professional baseball, professional basketball. Reggie Miller and Troy Aikman made a shit ton of money. Those were my classmates. I'm aging myself. Everyone else was calling me at 27 looking for a job. They went to the Olympics. They got a bronze medal. Great experience. No money in it. And the sexier an industry. So, and by something super sexy on a big screen, you're fucked. So ROI inversely correlated to the size of the screen and how sexy an industry is. So if you're going to be an advertiser in your own agency, service the just worst sounding industries in the world. Be like the agency for like plumbing supplies or something.
Hi, Jasmine Ferreira, JP Morgan, which I'm laughing as I say it for your financial comments, but totally agree. Right now, I'm going back to the social media thing because it's just with the listeners, like it's just such a hot topic. Mm-hmm. We know it's not right today, but what can we as marketers do today to get it right without the regulation in place?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Try and reward platforms to be hit, but it's so hard because you're a marketer. I can't stand Meta. I advertise on Meta. I have an online education company. I choose me over. I mean, it's very hard. You'd be doing your clients a disservice if you decided, oh, Alphabet radicalizes young men or Meta is depressing young teens, so we don't advertise for our clients. You'd be doing our clients a disservice because these are monopolies and they kind of control the ecosystem, right? So I don't know. I think I was asked this question. I presented to Elliott a few days ago, which is one of the largest hedge funds. The only people who pay my speaking fees now are these large hedge funds. By the way, I speak at JP Morgan all the time. Look, I think the best thing that JP Morgan can do, or a big successful financial services firm, is to stop what I'll call certification-based hiring. What do I mean by that? Try and allocate 10, 20, 30% of the professional track positions in your department to kids who you develop what I'll call a skills-based assessment as opposed to a certification-based assessment. And that is, we fetishize kids from elite universities. And at Morgan Stanley, and I imagine at JP Morgan, it's very hard to get past security unless you went to an elite college for a professional track job. And the problem is when you decide you're only going to hire people from elite universities, you're never going to hire a single mother. You're going to hire very few Latinas. And there's some really good kids out there that just aren't cut out for college. Only 1/3 of kids get a traditional college degree. So I'm working with a hedge fund right now to come up with a skills-based assessment, and they just hired their first they've hired a woman who was a high school dropout that's like a math whiz. And they gave her a test, and she has great critical thinking. Took the GSE, whatever you call it. She dropped out of high school. She had an addiction problem, but she's very, very smart, and they think it's going to work out. So 10, 20, 30, 50% of jobs try and go through the effort of finding someone who maybe doesn't have an elite college degree who could potentially be successful, because I worry that me and my colleagues are creating a new caste system where the small number of people who graduate from elite colleges who are one of two things. They either have rich parents or they're freakishly remarkable at the age of 17. I mean, I don't know about you, any of you. I was not freakishly remarkable at 17, but UCLA had a 76% admissions rate. This year's going to be 9%. And the tail that wags the dog for colleges is recruiters. So I think that JP Morgan, a company that's as powerful and as big as JP Morgan, if they decide, they say we're moving to a skills-based assessments as opposed to a certification-based assessment, and we're going to try to make sure we hire from a lot of what I'll call the non-name brand schools and figure out a way to identify the best kids at those schools. I think that's the best way for an organization like JP Morgan, much less the marketing department, to kind of move society forward. Me and my colleagues, every morning we wake up and we look in the mirror and we ask ourselves the same question. How do I increase my compensation while reducing my accountability? And the way we have figured out how we can do that is by LVMHing colleges. Harvard has grown its endowment 5,000% in the last 40 years. It's increased its freshman class 4%. So we have these incendiary arguments over how many non-whites we let in or how many gay kids we let in. It's a total misdirect. It's not who we let in. The question should be how many, right? We should be letting in more trans kids, more non-white kids, more white kids from Appalachia, more conservative kids. We just need more. But until we get to that point, I think that big corporations that are amazing platforms, like someone gets a job at JP Morgan. I have this conversation all the time. They come into my office and they'll say, I got a job at JP Morgan, but I really want to start my own company. I'm like, don't be fucking stupid. Go to JP Morgan. These big companies, the American corporation is the greatest wealth builder in the history of mankind. They're huge platforms. They'll have that mole removed. They'll figure out for you a way to save money. They care about you. You can totally fuck up and they'll forgive you. They will invest for you. They are just amazing. You got to put up a lot of bullshit, right? People less smart than you will get promoted. You'll get an email from someone will tell you there's a new policy and you won't even know why or who decided, and you have to comply with it. But if you can put up with that and you're patient, you can get wealthy slowly. They'll invest in you. They're nice people. They try to be civic minded. They try to comply with the law and they try not to discriminate. They will give you, what's maternity leave at JP Morgan?
For example, in the UK, you can get up to 6 months now. So.
Okay. Dudes get 6 months paternity leave. Do you know what paternity leave was when I was at Morgan Stanley? It was, oh, you're not committed. Take the afternoon. That was paternity leave. Take the afternoon. That was literally, my mom was a secretary. They didn't have maternity leave. I mean, they had unpaid, but they didn't have maternity leave. So big corporations have come really far. I think that we romanticize entrepreneurship and we don't give big corporations the power or the prestige they deserve. The key is, how do big corporations start hiring people who haven't been fortunate enough to go to elite universities? That was a word salad, but I would say just make it your own personal, and the department and JP Morgan. I've talked to Jamie about this. You got to hire more unremarkable kids. And when I say unremarkable, I mean they didn't go to elite universities. Their parents aren't rich, right? Are they good kids? Are they smart? Do they test well? Whatever it might be. You know, I'd like to see corporate American universities be like the Navy SEALs. Anyone can go try out for the Navy SEALs. Anyone can show up day one for the Navy SEALs. Not everyone makes it, but everyone gets to show up. I think that's what college should be like. I mean, you're always going to have elite colleges, but 76% when I applied, and now it's 9%? Just weird. Anyways.
We're out of time, Scott, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Big round of applause. Thank you very much for listening or watching Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching, hit subscribe there as well. I'd also love to get a review. Reviews make a big difference on other people discovering the show. So please do leave a review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to contact me, you can do. I'm over on X at UncensoredCMO or on LinkedIn, where I'm under my own name, John Evans. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.